Good morning, April 11th. In the afterglow, in the hangover of the 3 days of the writing of the Book of the Law and the end of 2024's High Holy Days of Thelema. And we've been reading the last 3 days. We read each of the chapters of the Book of the Law, of the three chapters, discussed what we could. I was reading a lot out of the Equinox of the Gods, which was Crowley's publication that shared the story of the genesis of how the book came into being. And it sort of climaxed yesterday, and up here in Sacramento, 418 Oasis, OTO, had a wonderful dinner at New Kathmandu, Nepalese restaurant last night. It was very well attended, and we had a wonderful, wonderful dinner. And the lodge master had copies of the Book of the Law that the Oasis privately publishes for everybody at the table. And Brother Stephen read the entire third chapter last night. It was a little noisy, and I didn't have my hearing boosters with me, but it was still nice. And the lodge master Rose suggests that we read our favorite verse from the third chapter, and some of us did, and I did. And to tell you the truth, it's really hard for you to pick, what's your favorite verse, because you could pick, funny ones and ones that are shocking and things like that. But truthfully, when I thought about it and was thumbing through the third chapter to what I quoted was from chapter 3, and it's verse 36 through 63 through 67. And it just says, "The fool readeth this book of the law and its comment, and he understandeth it not. Let him come through the first ordeal. It will be to him as silver. Through the second, gold. Through the third, stones of precious water. Through the fourth, ultimate sparks of the intimate fire." So that was mine, and I read that. Why am I sharing that little anecdote from last night's celebration? It's because at the very end of this long and extremely detailed description of the genesis of the writing of the Book of the Law, at the very end, when Crowley's wrapping it up, here's what he says. And an editorial note on that third chapter. "The reader is now in full possession of the account of how thou didst come hither." That's a quote from the Book of the Law. All this in a book to say how thou didst come hither, okay? "The student who wishes to act intelligently will be at pains to make himself thoroughly acquainted at the outset with the whole of the external circumstances connected with the writing of the book, whether they are of biographical or other importance. He should thus be able to approach the book with his mind prepared to apprehend the unique character of their contents in respect of its true authorship and peculiarities of its method of communicating thought, and the nature of its claim to be the canon of truth, the key of progress, and the arbiter of conduct. He will be able to form his own judgment upon it only insofar as he is fixed in the proper point of view. The sole question for himself is to decide whether or not that which it claims to be, the new law in the same sense as the Vedas or the Pentateuch or the Tao Te Ching or the Quran, are laws, but with the added authority of verbal, literal, and graphic inspiration established and counterchecked by internal evidence with impeccable precision of a mathematical demonstration. If it be that, it is a unique document, valid, absolutely within the terms of its self-contained thesis, incomparably more valuable than any other transcript of thought which we possess. If it be not wholly that, it is a worthless curiosity of literature. Worse, it is an appalling proof that no kind or degree of evidence soever is sufficient to establish any possible proposition, since the closest concatenation of circumstances may be no more than the jetsam of chance, and the most comprehensive plans of purpose a puerile pantomime. To reject this book is to make reason itself ridiculous, and the law of probabilities a caprice. In its fall, it shatters the structure of science and buries the whole hope of man's heart in the rubble, throwing upon its heaps the skeptic, blinded, crippled, and gone melancholy mad. The reader must face the problem squarely. Half measures will not avail. If there be aught he recognizes as transcendent truth, he cannot admit the possibility that the speaker, taking such pains to prove himself in his words, should yet incorporate falsehood in the same body and fence it about with the same elaborate engines. If the book be but a monument of a mortal's madness, he must tremble that such power and cunning may be the accomplices of insane and criminal anarchs. But if he know the book to be justified of itself, it shall be justified also of its children. And he will glow with gladness in his heart as he reads the 63rd through 67th verses of its third chapter, and gain his first glimpse of who he himself is in truth, and to what fulfillment of himself it is a virtue to bring him. And I'll add that I did not read that in advance yesterday when I hurriedly was asked to read my favorite verses of chapter 3. Okay, we're bringing it to an end for another year. I hope if you've missed any of the last few morning broadcasts here, you can find them on YouTube. I'll finally end the way Crowley ends this section of the Equinox of the Gods. It's chapter 8, the summary of the case. Don't worry, it's only a couple pages. In this revelation is the basis of the future aeon. Within the memory of man, we've had the pagan period, the worship of nature, of Isis, of the mother, of the past. The Christian period, the worship of man, of Osiris, of the present. The first period is simple, quiet, easy, and pleasant. The material ignores the spiritual, talking about Isis. The second is of suffering and death. The spiritual strives to ignore the material. Christianity and all cognate religions worship death, glorify suffering, deify corpses. The new aeon is the worship of the spiritual made one with the material, of Horus, of the child, of the future. Isis was liberty, Osiris was bondage, but the new liberty is that of Horus. Osiris conquered her because she did not understand him. Horus avenges both his father and his mother. This child Horus is a twin, two in one. Horus and Harpocrates are one. They are also one with Set and Apophis, the destroyer of Osiris. It is by the destruction of the principle of death that they are born. The establishment of this new aeon, this new fundamental principle, is the great work now to be accomplished in the world. Frater Perdurabo, to whom this revelation was made with so many signs and wonders, was himself unconvinced. He struggled against it for years. Not until the completion of his own initiation of 1909 did he understand how perfectly he was bound to carry out this work. The footnote says, indeed, it was not until his word became conterminous with himself and his universe that all alien ideas lost their meaning for him. Now, if I'm not mistaken, he's talking about his advancement to the grade of Magus, number 2 on the tree of life. That's where the Magus delivers his word. It's the Logos. It's the Shiva of the Shakti that's in Bina, number 3. And another official name is Chaos. Another official name is the Beast, as number 3 is Babylon. Okay, but I digress. Again and again he turns away from it. Took it up for a few days or hours, then laid it aside. He even attempted to destroy its value to nullify the result. Again and again, unsleeping might of the watchers drove him back to the work. And it was at the very moment when he thought himself to have escaped it that he found himself fixed forever with no possibility of again turning aside for a fraction of a second from the path. The history of this must be one day told by a more vivid voice. Properly considered, it is a history of continuous miracle. Even if it is now said that this law lies the whole future, it is the law of liberty, and those who refuse it proclaim themselves slaves, and as slaves they shall be chained and flogged. It is the law of love, and those who refuse it declare themselves to be children of hate. and their hate shall return upon them and consume them with unending tortures. It is the law of life, and those who refuse it shall be subject to death, and the death shall catch them unawares. Even their life shall be a living death. It is the law of light, and those who refuse it thereby make themselves dark forever. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Refuse this and fall under the curse of destiny. Divide will against itself. The result is impotence and strife in vain. The law condemns no man except the law, and everything is lawful. Refuse the law. You put yourself beyond its pale. It is the law that Jesus Christ, or rather the Gnostic tradition of which the Christ legend is a degradation, attempted to teach. But nearly every word he said was misinterpreted and garbled by his enemies, particularly by those who called themselves his disciples. In any case, the aeon was not ready for the law of freedom. Of all his followers, only St. Augustine appears to have got even a glimmer of what he meant. A further attempt to teach this law was made through Sir Edward Kelly at the end of the 16th century. The bondage of orthodoxy prevented his words from being heard or understood. In many other ways, has the spirit of truth striven with man, and partial shadows of this truth have been the greatest allies of science and philosophy. Only now has success been attained. A perfect vehicle was found, and the message enshrined in a jeweled casket, that is to say, in a book with the injunction changed not so much as the style of a letter. This book is reproduced in facsimile in order that there be no possibility of corrupting it. Here, then, we have an absolutely fixed and definite standpoint for the foundation of an universal religion. We have the key to the resolution of all human problems, both philosophical and practical. If we've seen to labor at proof, our love must be the excuse of our infirmity. For we know well that which is written in the book, quote, success is your proof. We ask no more than one witness, and we call upon time to take the oath and testify to the truth of our plea. And that's how the Equinox of the Gods ends. Crowley brings up Jesus Christ and the Christ legend in this. And he does it as he does in many other places, including multiple places in the Magic Without Tears, that when you read it, you go, well, why does everyone think that he's so anti-Christian? He even calls himself sort of the Antichrist. Does he hate Jesus? You know, and the Book of the Law, with my hawk's head, I peck at the eyes of Jesus. And one would understandably jump to the conclusion that he's being anti-Christian. In a sense, he is being anti-Christian. what's called Christian, that formula that's been such a spectacularly bloody failure to the mental health of mankind, for the most part, socially, okay. But he really digs the message of Jesus, at least as much of it that hasn't been completely obfuscated in the Gospels. Here's what he says in Equinox 3, Jesus. Okay, Equinox 3, Volume 2. It was eventually published as Crowley on Christ, or the comment on the Gospel according to George Bernard Shaw. Consult Equinox 3:2. Jesus, a study of the New Testament by the B666, where it is proven that, quote, Jesus, unquote, is a composite figure of several incompatible elements. There is, therefore, no, quote, he in the case. That's the footnote of where they talk about Jesus as a he up there. The Gospels are a crude compilation of Gnosticism, Judaism, Essenism, Hinduism, Buddhism, with the watchwords of various sacerdotal political cults, thrown in at random into a hodgepodge of the distorted legends of the persons of the pagan pantheon, all glued with a semblance of unity in the interest of sustaining the shaken fabric of local faiths against the assaults of the consolidation of civilization, and of applying the cooperative principle to the businesses whose throats were being cut by the competition. In other words, the unity of humanity and civilization, at least in the West, was being brought together, a web of new consciousness and communication being wed together by the Roman Empire, had changed the marketplace of ideas. And people had to scramble to say, oh no, this is like your religion, only better, or this is like, oh, that's our holiday too. Stuff like that. Anyway, that is that. I will change the subject tomorrow, hopefully. And until then, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.